One of my goals in this YouTube channel is to bring real science to YouTube. And the vast majority of my videos are preventive medicine science. This doesn't sound like it. It sounds like more of a personal, emotional story. And that's what it is. It's going to be a little bit challenging for me, but I think I'll wade through it. How I lost 30 pounds in the late 1970s. Now, most people look at me and they think, well, you've been in preventive medicine your whole life, and you've tended to practice what you preach for the most part. Um, so maybe you've always been thin. No, not so. Um, I've never been what we would call completely obese. I'm currently a BMI of 21. I've had a BMI of 25 though, 30 pounds heavier than what I currently am. I'm currently 5'10 and 152, 153 pounds. Before I talk about how I lost that weight, I probably need to talk about how I gained it. It had to do with organic chemistry and my grandmother's cooking. Now maybe you're gonna see the obvious connection that grandmother cooking is being an organic chemist. That wasn't the point. No, I was in a fairly rigorous college program. It wasn't your Animal House type of experience. I wasn't in any fraternities. Didn't do any of that experience. I was working very hard. I actually completed my Bachelor of Science in 2 years. I was in the 5-year medical program. So it was intense. I actually even was naive enough to expect to get some relief when I slowed down and went with everybody else at med school. That wasn't the case either. It was a different level of competition at that point. Um, and I didn't see it as competition. But so here I was after a very difficult first year I enjoyed it, but very difficult, very challenging first year of college, and then taking organic chemistry this summer between those 2 years of college. Organic organic chemistry is the pre-med class that's supposed to cut most of the folks that aren't going to make it into med school. It's a challenging course. I took it at a local community college. My grandmother lived nearby, just a couple of miles away, and I grew up with my grandmother. So um, I relished the idea of getting to stay with her, and I did. I remember studying all day, every day, taking naps in the afternoon, and waking up dreaming of a methane molecule joining with another methane molecule to form ethane. And you know, those of you who have taken organic chemistry may remember that. So I gained weight. I gained a lot of weight that summer. And that came on the back of a lifetime of family reunions. When you look at grandmas, my grandma sort of looked like this. Our kitchen sort of looked like these two. We were lower middle class, and my mother had 8 or 9 sisters and 1 brother. So we had family unions. Also, lower middle class, rural families. So I remember at one family reunion we had 300 people, and everybody brought a covered dish. My dad, this was the grandmother that I stayed with during organic chemistry was his mother, and I'm convinced she had a whole lot to do with his BMI. He was at 5'10", my height, 350 pounds and more during much of his life. He tended to, and 350 pounds and 5'10" is a BMI of 50. That's beyond obese. The conversations around food in that family were just, I mean, and I don't mean the conversations, the lifestyle, the perceptions around food were, I'll cover that. I'll go over it. I've covered it in another video. I'll mention it a couple of times in this video. So this was my dad up on the orange and red end of the scale, and this is me now down in the dark blue, and then me in the light blue end, just getting into that light blue end when I gained that weight. Talking about the culture around food, you know, we're southern rural was not the only culture that focuses on food and feasting around weddings, holidays, funerals, and other big days. People do it, but again, we had a major focus on it. Well, I bring this up because pizza and beer were not a big deal for me. I did enjoy pizza, but not beer. But we would go hog wild at times when we were celebrating. In fact, in terms of the culture around that, I mentioned the other video I did, I trampled all over the standards of mental health science and addiction science and compared my perspective, my emotional stuff around food to an addiction. And I still think, I mean, again, not speaking as a professional, but speaking just as an individual who's had to manage his or her relationship with food for 60-something years. It's got a lot to do with addiction. It's, you know, a dependence, knowing that it may be negatively impacting your health, an inability to stop anyway, and etc. Just a lot of stuff. So how did I lose 30 plus pounds? I went low fat. Mostly low fat and plant-based / pescatarian. And people say, oh, you know, and I fully expect people to say, oh, that was an idiot move. Actually, I've been able to lose weight more recently. I've done a couple of videos on that. Went up to 160. And I do that with low carb. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I maintain my weight now. But this was the 70s. You didn't tend to focus on low carb then. It was low fat. Travel and restaurants were not a big deal during the late 70s because we just didn't eat out that much. I just quit eating. How do I compare the cultures of my current family versus my family of origin? Again, I covered that in the other, food addiction video. 60 to 40 years ago, my family of origin, we all struggled with being overweight. It was physical and behavioral, very positive. Food was a way to celebrate and a way to show that you cared. The women showed that they cared by making food. And they also showed that their own performance and capabilities by making food. And the men went hog wild at buffets, and I was one of them. We loved sweets like blackberry cobbler. My wife is in a different perspective. Her family never had struggles with being overweight. In fact, they had more struggles with being underweight. Physical and behavioral components around food, we all have that. And they often needed to be coaxed to eat. They were intimidated by food prep and large quantities like buffets. They were not into sweets. Again, a very, very different view and culture around food. Now, how have I kept the 30 pounds off? That would take me back up to these two components, the travel and restaurant components. No entrees except large salads, no fats except fish, no meats, no pastas. Small desserts were okay, but I was constantly saying, I was a nudge. Can I have a taste? Can I have a taste? Can I have a taste? Because somebody would have a really good pasta that, you know, I'd want, or even more so, a really good piece of meat that I'd want to try. And from that perspective, I was not, or somebody would have a big dessert. And from that perspective, I was not I was a challenge to eat with, I think. How do I keep 30 pounds off now? Well, it's very different. It's a low carb diet, a decreased eating window, and those two things I tend to see with a lot of folks that I work with, a lot of my patients. have taken 30 pounds off or more and keeping it off. They tend to call the decreased eating window an intermittent fasting. Technically it's more just decreasing the eating window from 7 or 8 in the morning to 10 at night. That's a large window. Decreasing it down to, like, for me, 11 o'clock or noon to about 6 or 7. 2 days a week of water fast, or an extended water fast, and an occasional fasting mimicking diet. I'm constantly watching, constantly asking myself, what am I doing in terms of my behavior around eating? And I'm constantly a nudge to my current family. Again, they don't have a problem with weight, so they don't need to constantly ask themselves and each other how much they weigh and that sort of thing. In fact, they do not, it makes them uncomfortable. So speaking of being uncomfortable, this has been an uncomfortable presentation for me. I hope it hasn't been too uncomfortable for you if you've made it this far, and thanks for your interest. Have a 2-day event in Louisville, November 8th and 9th. Get your CIMT and all of your labs.